Clan of the Duck is such an amazing Rugrats episode. This is the second segment of the 10th episode of the 4th season, and Rugrats is actually quite ahead of its time. This was released in the mid-ish 90s, and not for the first time I've watched an episode and thought, you're tackling a topic that other shows haven't done for, quite a few years after this. And I have to say, it's so quotable. There are a few quotes that I will share, and being Scottish, there are a couple of moments that I really truly adored as well. It starts off with the babies making mud people, and they're complaining about how hot it is and how their shorts are chafing on their knees. And Lil points out that she wears a dressy and it doesn't go far down enough to chafe her knees. And Tommy asks, and I quote, "Why do we gotta wear different stuff?" And Phil says, "If girls can wear anything they want, then so can we." And I thought that was lovely. And it's obviously something that's a little bit more acceptable nowadays. It's still, well, there's a quote a little later on that I'll give you that I think is also pretty powerful. But the various babies, Tommy and Lil, go off to do their own things with their parents, and Howard has to look after Chuckie and Phil. I think this is the first time Howard has independently looked after Chuckie. I could be wrong, but it was a very different setup. And left to their own devices, Phil and Chuckie decide to play dress up and put on some clothing that makes it look like they're wearing dresses, wearing skirts at least. And Howard oversleeps, and in a rush to get them to the food fair to meet the other grown-ups, he just kind of picks them up, not really paying attention to what they're wearing, and takes them to the fair. Now, that in itself is not unusual. Children play dress up or put on, haphazard clothing and go out all of the time. But when they get to this, to the food fair, they meet the other babies, some other babies, two boy babies. These two boy babies think that Phil and Chuckie are girl babies because they're wearing skirts. And Chuckie kind of wants to correct them, but then the boy babies are about to offer them chocolate and gummy worms, or dummy worms as they call them. And Phil realizes that if they pretend to be girls and play along with this, they get sweets. And it's an interesting thought about how these boy babies are prepared to treat Phil and Chuckie with kindness and a little bit of groping. It does get a little bit awkward where they're both pulling about at Chuckie at one point, and it's a bit uncomfortable how they're treating Chuckie when they think she's a girl. But it shows that they're actually going to treat babies differently based on whether they think they're a boy or a girl, which is obviously an interesting thing for the show to approach. And I think they handled it well. They showed that these boy babies were treating, well, Phillian and Chuckina, as Phil and Chuckie call themselves, when they thought they were girl babies. There are also some other great moments, well, I say great moments, very quotable moments, where Chuckie asks at one point, "How come we can't wear dresses?" And Phil says, "Because they'll beat us up." Which I thought was such a strong thing to say. And this is obviously something that's true even today, almost 30 years later, is that a lot of people, males in particular, are at risk of being beat up. If they want to go outside and wear a dress or a skirt, there are going to be some individuals who are going to not just look down on them and judge them, but physically assault them. And the fact that Rugrats was highlighting this in a children's show is really embedding that message really early on and saying that this is not appropriate. It's not suitable to treat somebody like this. And I think that that's a really powerful, strong thing that the episode was doing. I love the fact that they included sumo wrestlers wearing what the babies thought were just giant diapers, further showing that there are so many unfair rules, and I use that in quotations, because what's fine for one person is not acceptable for somebody else. And then, of course, we get the Clan of the Duck. There are maybe 6 or 8 Scottish babies wearing kilts, which of course look like skirts, further causing more confusion for Chuckie and Phil. And they shout freedom at one point and up their kilts in a kind of really synchronized fashion, and it was just so funny. Me being Scottish, I absolutely adored it. Some of the accents were a bit awkward, some of them were really good, and I just loved how it was animated. I loved how it flowed. I loved the whole Clan of the Duck thing. It entertained me so much. It was already a really brilliant episode. But obviously, with me being Scottish, once that happened, I just thought this is perfect. I absolutely love it. So, in a way, it's a slightly awkward episode to watch because of how Chuckie and Phil are being treated. But I love the fact that basically all of the babies, mainly Chuckie and Phil, realize that it's unfair and that it's not right that they're going to get beat up by these boy babies just because they're wearing makeshift skirts or dresses, and that's completely unacceptable. And unfortunately, I feel it's very realistic even today, and that's horrible. There was a quote Lil said early on where I think Phil asked, why can't we wear dresses? And Lil said because girls are good and boys are naughty babies. And that was a little bit uncomfortable because it felt like that's what Betty was teaching Lil because they were going to an empowerment class. It feels like Betty is definitely raising Lil as a feminist, which is good. That in itself is not bad, but you can also go too far the other way and deliver some very negative opinions that basically raise females as being stronger than the other sex, and that's not right. It's all about equality. So that was a bit awkward. But other than that, I think it's a very wonderful episode that tackles a really important topic that affects adults as well. But delivering these messages as early as possible helps to teach children that it's not acceptable to treat people negatively just because they want to wear a dress. It's absolutely unacceptable. And yeah, it is unfair because girls eventually started to be allowed to wear trousers. At one point, that wasn't acceptable. But why has it never gone the other way? Why did society start to feel like it was acceptable for women to wear trousers, but not acceptable for men to wear skirts aside from kilts? So, very thought provoking, very well animated, great pacing, very quotable. Love the Scottish babies, love the design of the food fair, always something to look at. Definitely a really fantastic Rugrats episode.